Hello, I hope you're doing fine today. Today I will be showing you how to create your own custom caching plugin from scratch. So first of all, let me show you what we're actually going to build. So I have set up a development environment in WordPress, and I have a caching plugin which I can enable right here. I also have preload, but don't mind that at this moment. So we have our plugin, my caching plugin, which is activated, and we can activate it like this. Right now, when we refresh our page without activation, the caching plugin is not running. I will show you in an instant how we can see this. So let's put it on, save settings. I have an option here to clear the cache. If you have made any changes, you can click clear cache and the cache will be cleared. When a user is logged in, you will see this, the top bar, the navigation bar for administrator. When this is active, when the user is logged in, the cache will not work. The cache will only work when you are not logged in. I have already opened an incognito window, and right now the cache should be active. We can see this if we see view source. We see this page has been cached by our awesome caching plugin. If we disable the cache, save settings, and we refresh the source, you see this is gone. This is because now the page is created by PHP and not coming from the cache. Alrighty, so I have just enabled the cache, I have clicked save settings, and right now when we refresh our page, we can see the DOM content has loaded within 426 milliseconds. If we disable our cache, save settings, and then try to run it again, we can see the DOM content loaded is 856 seconds. Now why is that? When a page in WordPress is created, on the page request, a lot of queries have to be made. In my case, Elementor queries, some queries to fetch the page, and this is all queries to the databank. And this can take some time. But what the caching plugin does is, when the first page is requested, there's a file created, index.html in this case, because it's the home page. If it would be a child page, it would have the name of the child page. And if we check this, one moment, you can see we open it, and it's just an HTML file which contains all of our code. So the server doesn't have to fetch everything from the database anymore. It can just render a saved HTML file and give that to the user, and that's a lot quicker. If you see the page source, it's exactly the same source code as our actual page if we were to inspect this. So that is the wonderful experience of caching. Alright, so I have set up a brand new development environment in WordPress, and I have created a folder, my caching plugin, inside our plugins folder. Now let's start with the main plugin class which will run our plugin. So in here I will make a file, my caching plugin.php. I'm gonna paste in some data to actually create a plugin. This is just some metadata. You can fill in your own, pause the video and fill in your own things. Now we need some constants. So define my caching plugin version. First version is version 1.0. Define my caching plugin dir. For the directory is plugin dir path file. This is just so we can use this constant to reference this functionality. And we'll also do it for the URL, my caching plugin URL. And I'm gonna copy this slight modification, plugin dir URL, small file. All right, now we need to load in our actual plugin. For this, I'm gonna use semi-OOP. So require once my, so I'm gonna require once this dir concatenate includes inc class my caching plugin .php like this. But this class and this folder does not exist yet. So let's create a new folder, inc and in here, copy this part, create a new file like this, and we'll do open PHP class my caching plugin. Mind the capitals, open close brackets, and we have our class. Only now we have to load it. So function my caching plugin init is my caching plugin new my caching plugin and run the class. And now we have to run this function. So on add action init, when the WordPress init hook is run, our function will run, and this will call this function. Right now this function is pretty empty, so let's fill it with some data. First we need a constructor which will run on creation. We will do two things. First we will load in the classes which our plugin will need, and then we'll call the init function which will new up these classes. Right now we don't have these methods yet, but we will write them. So our plugin will have two parts. It will have a caching part and it will have an admin part. The admin part will be responsible for all the settings, like this. Sorry, it's not here anymore, but you saw where I can disable and enable the settings. And the caching part, which will do the actual caching, clear caching functionality, and adding a comment to the code so we know our caching is working. All right, first of all, we need a public function, load classes, and in here we'll do some requires. I'm gonna copy paste them. So we have require once class my caching plugin admin, require once class my caching plugin cache. These files don't exist yet, so it's required them in this folder, so we can just include class. Just for the sake of it, I'm gonna copy it so I don't make any mistakes or typos, because that's my #1 culprit. All right, so we have those classes. Let's quickly create them. Class my caching plugin cache. Nope, like this, and my caching plugin admin. All right, so now that we have those classes required, all we have to do is initialize them. And we have a great method for that. Public function init. And we'll do admin is new my caching plugin admin. And we'll do cache is new my caching plugin cache. You'll see me often do things like this. So admin is, cache is, my caching plugin is, whilst I'm not really using these variables. The reason why I'm doing this, you don't have to put this here. You can also put it like this. But now if I need something in here later to do my caching plugin and some method, I can do that. That's something I do beforehand, but it's not really necessary. In here you could, for example, connect these to the caching plugin instance, so we can do public admin, and then when we do this is this admin is new, and then it would be coupled to this class, but and then we could use it in different methods down below, but that's not really necessary, so I'll just go back how it was. All right, so now that we have this, we should be able to refresh here and have a caching plugin. Let's activate it. It's activated, but it isn't doing anything yet. We'll do that later. Now the first thing I want to do is create the actual admin settings page. So follow along. So in our class my plugin admin, we will also create this constructor, public function construct. And in here we will do add action admin menu is this add. For those of you who are not familiar with this syntax, because I am doing this class based in an OOP style, I will have to run a constructor which will be run when this is called, and this will call the action, and because we don't have that function yet, we will do public function and settings page, And what this syntax will do is, because we cannot just use a string here, we will bind it to the current class this, which refers to this, and it will call this function on that class with this syntax. Now we have to add an options page here, and this will take some arguments. My caching plugin settings is the title. Let's see, we don't have a dummy for that. My caching plugin. Users will have to need the manage options. I forgot the name in English, sorry. What it means. This is the slug for our plugin, my caching plugin. And then we go back to the array syntax, so this, and then settings page. This is the actual callback which will be run and which will echo out the contents of the page. So let's write this callback. So public function settings page, and I'm gonna paste in some code and let's go over it. So we'll create a div with wrap, then we'll get the title. We will have an options page which will have a section settings field, do settings section which will run a callback, and a button for the field. Now we're not done yet. We will now need, let me see, in here we will now need to register some settings. So add action admin init this register, oh, so this, not this, register settings. All right, let's write this functionality. So public function register settings. I hope I'm not making not too many mistakes. Okay, so in here we'll do register setting. Again, my caching plugin settings group. This is what we have defined here, the settings section field, and we'll register our custom setting, my caching plugin enable cache. This will be the value of the checkbox. All right, we're not done yet, so in here we'll need an add settings section. Whoa. Okay, so my caching plugin settings section. The section name will be cache settings. The callback will be this settings section, and it will be coupled to this section. So this section will be coupled in here. It will be rendered in there. Sorry, coupled is the wrong word. Okay, now we need this. Now we need to write this function, public function. This will create the setting section like this, and this will be echo $p configure the caching options for your site like this. Now we need one more thing, one more setting section. So add settings section, my caching plugin enable cache. So for this setting we will have a name enable cache. Everything will become clear pretty soon. We will need a function for that, enable cache field, and this will also be rendered in the my plugin section. This will be in. This will be a subsection of this section. Oh, and now we only need to write that code. So colon public function enable cache field, and this will be, first we need a value if it already exists. So get option, and this is the option we've written right here. So let's get that option for the database if it exists, and then echo input type checkbox. Name is name it That's not good. It's like this. Name is, I think it's the same. My caching plugin enable. Then the value is 1, or the value is 1, and it's checked if the value 1 false. What this does is, if this value is already set, it will be the value yes or no. So if this value is 1, this will be checked. If the value is 0, it will be unchecked. Let's see if I've made any mistakes. So in here, you'll see now my caching plugin. This is the admin section we've created, and we have an enable cache option right here. But there seems to be something wrong with my HTML, but I'm not gonna look for that at the moment. All right, so now I can enable or disable the cache, and as you can see, the setting is saved. Awesome. All right, so now that we finished our admin section, we can write our actual caching code. So we go into the class my caching plugin cache file, and in here write constructor. So public function construct, and we'll do this init. All right, now we have to write the init function. So public function init, and in here we'll do some checks. So first of all, if the cache is not enabled, is cache enabled, or if is user logged in, we will not run our cache. So we'll just return out of the function, but we don't have this function yet. So let's write that. So public function is cache enabled, return get option. And do you remember which option? It's this one over here. Look for it. It's the option we wrote here. So my caching plugin enabled, which is actually this option. So if this option is checked, it will return true, and we will continue here. Otherwise, we won't. Now, to make this functionality work, we need 2 hooks. So first of all, add action WP head this cache page start. We will run this as soon as possible. Priority 0, and add action WP footer another cache page end, and we will run this as late as possible. PHP int max. All right, now all we have to do is write these 2 functions. All right, so the first function we will have to write is the cache page start function. So let's do it. Public function cache page start, and in this function we will first check to see if the page is already cached. So if this is page cached, then whoops, we will do a few things. First of all, we will get the cache file from the cache. So cache file is this get cache file, and then we will read that file. This is just a PHP function, and we'll exit. What we'll do then is obey start. This will start output buffering. If you are not familiar with output buffering, I would recommend you to read up on it on the PHP docs. But what it generally does is, instead of echoing and rendering everything to the page, it will start a buffer where all the code, the HTML code, will be put in, and then we can do things with that code. And in our case, we will have to save that code to an HTML file. So that's that, but we'll do one more thing. We'll do echo. I'm gonna copy something here. We'll do echo. This page has been cached by our awesome caching plugin, and then an end of line. What this will do is, if this will be our check to see if the page is rendered via our caching plugin, or is it rendered via just some database calls. All right. As you can see, we have 2 methods which we haven't created yet. So the isPage cache method. Sorry guys, this is really hard for me to say. And the get cache file. So first of all, let's write the public function isPage cache. So public function isPage cached. And to do that, we will do cache file is this get cache file. And if it is, we will do return file exists cache file and file size is greater than 0. All right, let me explain this a little bit. So the is page cache, we will get the current cache file. It's the same as here, because here we have to read it, but here we'll do some other things with it. So first of all, this needs to be NN, sorry, not OR. So first of all, we will get the cache file. And the first thing we'll do is check if the file exists. So in our case of index.html, this will get index.html from the cache and it will run a file exists. If this is true, we will go on to the next conditional. If this is false, we will enter this ob start, because this is not run. The next thing we'll do is check the file size of the file if it's greater than 0. Why are we doing this? Sometimes the cache can fuck up and a cache file will be created, but it will have 0 kilobytes, so it's empty. And that is when OB does something wrong, when the output buffering is going wrong. So by doing this, we will ensure that the actual cached page has content on it. So it's pretty important. Now we have one more file to write, and that is the get cache file function. One more function to run, sorry, or a method rather, because we are using a class-based approach. So public function get cache file. As you can hear, I'm struggling with my tongue pretty much, so bear with me. Okay. What is expected string? Found type void. That's because the file exists. Expected string. Okay. This is returning void right now. Okay. That's the problem. My IDE is smarter than me. So what do we need here? So first we need a page name, and the page name will be get query var page name. This is a WordPress function that will get the page name from the query, but sometimes this will return nothing, and that is when we are on the home page. So in that case, we will return index, and this will be index.html. Then we'll need to create file name. File name will be the page name concatenated with .html. Now we need a caching directory, and I will put it in cache dir wp content dir my caching plugin, and then a cache folder like this. Whoops, like this. So this is in the content directory. This will look for caching plugin cache folder, but let's check first if that directory exists. So if not is directory cache dir, then we will create that directory. So make dir cache dir 0055 as the permissions and the recursive is true, and then we will actually return the cache file name. So return cache dir dot file name. So what this function does is it will first create a page name, then it will create a file name. We will store the path into a variable. We will check if the path exists. If it doesn't exist, we will create it, and then we will just return the full path with the HTML file concatenated. I quickly want to fix a typo I saw. So in here I have typed add action actioned, so this has to be action like this. Now we need one more thing, and that is the cache page end function. So underneath the cache page start, we will do public function cache page end, and in here we will do first we will check if output buffering is active. So if not, ob get length return. So we only go further if output buffering is active. We need the actual output, so ob get contents, and then we have to stop output buffering, so ob and clean. Once again, I would recommend reading up on output buffering. What this just does is on WP head we will start output buffering if possible, like here. Then the full page will be loaded in between these two hooks, and then in the WP footer hook on the last split second we will render this and this will check if the output buffering is active. If it's active, it will get the output out of the ubi-get-contents function, which will be an HTML file at that moment, or HTML, not a file. And then we will end the output buffering clean. Then we will create a cache file variable. So cache file is this cache file. Again, this will put the file right here. Then we will do file put contents cache file output. So this will put the output of our rendered HTML into that cache file. And we will do echo output because we will need to display the page, of course. Now, if we've done everything correctly and if we refresh our page, we can see in our page sorts that we have this notification here. This page has been cached by our awesome plugin. If we check, oh, not the page sorts, but the network, we can see that our DOM content is loaded in 360 seconds. While if we disable the cache, let's load this again. We have double that. So we have actually created our first cache. Right, so I wanted to show you one more thing, and that is where the actual index.html is created. So as you remembered in the WP content directory, we made a new my caching plugin directory with a cache directory in there, and in here is our index.html. So this file contains all the HTML which is rendered by the output buffering. And this file is now loaded instead of going to the database and making all those calls if the caching is enabled. Pretty awesome, right? Now we need to create one more thing. At the start of the video, I've shown you that I had a clear cache button right here at the top bar. So I'll show you right now how we'll create that. Over in our my caching plugin admin class, I will add a new hook. Add action admin bar menu. In here we will run a function add clear cache link. Give it a priority of 9999, so it runs a bit later. And now we'll have to create this function. Scroll down to the end of the file, public function add clear cache link. Okay, so first of all, we have to check if the user has permission to clear a cache. So if current user can manage options, then we will return. So if the user is not an administrator, is this what it says, then we will return, so it won't work. If yes, we will do admin bar. This variable is available in this hook. Admin bar dot add menu like this, and we will need some properties for our menu bar. First of all, the ID will be my caching plugin clear cache. The title will be clear cache in our translation domain, and the href will be wnonce url admin url admin post.php action is my caching plugin clear cache, and we will give it this nonce identifier. So now if I've done this correctly, sorry, over here, undefined variable admin bar. Oh, sorry, I forgot to accept it, of course. So this function accepts admin bar and we can use it like this. And now we have a clear cache option, which will, as you can see down the bottom left, will run a post action admin post with the action my plugin clear cache with a nonce. But to make this work, we will have to write the action. So we go back to our constructor and we will add a new action hook. So add action, and then we have admin post underscore. This is WordPress defined. And now we will paste our own defined hook here. My caching. This is the one we have defined down the bottom. And then we'll call this handle clear cache request. This is another function we don't have defined yet. So down the bottom, there's a public function handle clear cache. And I will do some things to clear the cache. So first things first, again, we'll check if the user can clear the cache, because the user can only can clear the cache when he is an administrator. If he is not an administrator, we WP die and we said you don't have permission to clear the cache. If the user does have permission, we will call this clear cache. And afterwards we will redirect the user back to where he came from. So WP get referrer. And then we'll exit. So now we have the clear cache method here, but we haven't defined it yet. So public function clear cache. Again, I check if is admin to be safe. We instantiate a variable cache dir, which will be wp content dir dot my caching plugin. I'm gonna copy this from over here because it's the same. We could define this as a constant. So we get the cache dir, then we do this delete directory cache dir, and we'll go back to where we came from, like this. Now, one last thing, this method is not defined yet, so let's do public function delete directory, and in here this will accept a directory. First we'll check if it is a directory, if not, is there directory return true. So we'll exit early, otherwise we will get all the files. So array diff scandir directory, and we'll scan for dots and dot. What this will do, this will fetch all the files from the directory. Then we'll do a for each files as file. We'll get the path, so it's directory plus slash plus file. So in this case, it will, what this does is, if the file is index.html, this will get the directory, which is WP content there, so it will make directory slash index.html. So the file system has the correct file path. If is dir path, we will do this delete directory. So we are referencing the same function, so it's a recursive lookup. We'll do the path, else we'll unlink the path. This will delete the file, and at the end we'll return remove there, which will return a boolean if it succeeded directory. So with the clear cache functionality done, I will show you how it works. So in my folder, in my cache folder, my index.html file is here, but if I go to the website and I click clear cache, I might have to refresh first. If I now clear cache, I have an error, scandir undefined variable scandir. Let's find out. Oh, scandir is not a variable but a function. Let's clear the cache again. Alright, so now when I go to my cache folder and I refresh, it's still there. So I have to find the error. Alright, so I found the mistake. I have an underscore here in the name. This is in the class my caching plugin cache, so the first file we've tackled. I'm gonna change this with a dash. I'm gonna copy this and paste it exactly here. Now let's run our website again. I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna open it in an incognito fenster. So now this page should be cached. It's not. Why is it not cached? Oh, because I have the first run probably. No. Let me quickly see. Is my other cache is not enabled? That's the problem. Okay. So I enable the cache. I see this page is now being rendered by the cache. So if I go to my folders, so over here you can see that the new folder is created. I'm gonna delete this one because this is a mistake. And in here you'll see index.html. When I click clear cache and I go back to that folder, you can see that the file is gone. Index.html is gone. Alright, so you've made your own custom caching plugin. Awesome. If you want more of this content, feel free to drop a like or subscribe. See you in the next video.